Hello, everyone. We are loving all your engagement, all your comments and liking and subscribing and sharing. So we really appreciate you for sticking with us for this long. You're a legends and we love you. We have another legend with us today. We have Dr. Nicole Cain. So Dr. Cain, thank you so much for being with us.
I am delighted to be here.
Well, as are we. We're going to talk about panic today. We're going to talk about anxiety and how to be panic proof. I think a good place to start would be what do most people have to unlearn about anxiety?
Yeah. The main thing that you have to unlearn about anxiety is that anxiety is actually your body's attempts at helping you to solve a problem, as opposed to being the problem itself, which is hard to wrap our head around, right? Because it can feel so awful to debilitating. And so we label it as a symptom, we label it as a problem. But what we're actually discovering in the research is that anxiety, that panic, and all of the symptoms that we experience with that are the solutions, is our body's attempts at telling you what needs healing and how.
That's a very interesting. Imagine if you had person A and person B and they went through life, one thinking anxiety is a problem and one thinking anxiety is the solution. They would live two very different lives, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And
So,
I've been that testimony of what my life was like in the beginning, thinking and believing and being told as a client, as a patient, and as a doctor that anxiety is a problem, and what that looked like, and then what it looked like after I completely broke down that wall and rebuilt what was actually, I believe, true according to trauma-informed neuroscience. And then, of course, traditional wisdom. We're always validating traditional wisdom.
100%. Yeah, it almost seems like science is catching up and being like, oh, actually, we've known the answer all along, right? But
Yes.
it sounds very much like your journey. You know, you're a licensed naturopathic physician, clinical psychotherapist, but it's also your own research as well, right? It's very much me-search as opposed to research. Is that right?
Ooh, I like that term. Yeah. It was
Don't know where that
definite
came
research. It was really good. You should save that. I'm gonna
Yeah, I'll write
borrow
it down. Right, please do.
Yeah.
It's probably not mine.
Yeah.
I've got a quote for everything. It saves original thinking, right? So,
That's great. I'm
so
gonna use that too.
good. So it was how you came to this is very much your own experience and coupled with your professional experience. What informed which? Was it your own experience first and then decided to make a career out of this, or how'd you get about that?
Yeah. My own experience, I grew up in a very stressful household. So we talk about the roots of emotional distress, physical distress are often in family trauma. And this may not even be adversity that you're going through in your current family system. It could be inherited. In fact, one of the most famous studies about inherited trauma changing our experience 6 generations later would be the Dutch famine, where we had individuals who were starved and their descendants had this thrifty gene that was activated that when they would eat something, the body would hold on to the calories. And so these descendants of individuals who survived the Dutch famine struggled more with weight loss and metabolic issues. And so we've seen this with something that isn't necessarily mind-based, but we've also seen things that are mind-based. There's another study, it was the largest longitudinal study that looked at adversive childhood experiences and what happened throughout their lives. And this was done by the CDC and Kaiser Permanente in the United States. And what they discovered is that the more adversive childhood experiences an individual went through, the greater risk they had for long-term, later in life chronic issues. And so that affected their pregnancies, it affected their children's health, it affected their mental health, put them at a higher risk of high blood sugar, cancers, bone fractures, all sorts of things. And so we know that our early childhood experiences really matter. And my early childhood experience was really stressful. But I was an adaptive little girl, and adaptation can protect us. Our adaptation helps us survive. Kind of like if you go to northern Canada in the winter and it's incredibly cold, an adaptation is to put on a coat. And that coat will keep us warm, it will protect us from the elements. And my metaphorical winter coat when I was a little girl was to be very attuned to everybody's emotions. I would be able to tell based on the timbre of their voice if they were getting angry or if I was going to get in trouble for doing something that may be benign in another situation. And I became very good at trying to manage people's emotions around me. I would be silly. I would sing a song. I would disappear if I needed to. And so that coat, that adaptation, while necessary and useful as a child, created problems for me when I moved to the metaphorical warm desert in the summer and continued to wear that coat. So I actually live in Phoenix, Arizona. It was like 99 Fahrenheit here. It was very hot. And I was finding while my cousin was visiting that I was really hyper focused on, is she having fun? Is she getting bored? Did I say something wrong? I got to keep conversation flowing. Is she irritated with me? And so hyper attunement later in life, maybe manifesting is feeling really anxious in social situations or hyper vigilant, maybe, can be a symptom and a problem. So what we see with panic and anxiety is that those symptoms of panic and anxiety not only will affect our entire body from head to toe, including the gut microbiome, the immune system, our hormones, it can affect all of our bodies. But the problem is when those adaptations get stuck and we are no longer able to be in coherence with the present moment, and we find that our body is stuck in the past, our nervous system is stuck in the past, or maybe we're even future tripping, and we spend so much time worrying and preparing for the future, which hasn't happened. And so that kind of encapsulated experience set me up to be a very anxious person. My body was jumping on board to help sustain that anxiety, but that's not good for us biologically to be in a state of stress. And by the time I went to college, I was on 6 or 7 different medications. I wasn't getting any healthier. I was arguably feeling worse. And I decided to be a therapist and figure out ways to more effectively help more people. But there are limitations to just starting in the brain. We call this top-down approaches, where we use our upper brain, our more developed analytical brain, to try to change our internal experience. But if you've ever had a panic attack, or if you've ever had a broken foot, or you've ever had gastrointestinal pain, your gut was hurting, you can tell yourself all day long, think positive, manifest goodness. It's not logical to be getting an upset tummy before getting onto a podcast. Your body doesn't care. It's trying to protect you. And so I found that there are quite a lot of limitations in doing psychotherapy. And so I wanted to study medicine, but I wanted to do it in my way. And so naturopathic medicine is unique from allopathic or conventional medicine in that we look at what the body is trying to do in its inherent wisdom to keep us in homeostasis, to keep us healthy, and to help us heal. And after years of practicing that, I became the expert for anxiety and panic. I was like, oh, I'm a guru by experience of anxiety and panic. I'm going to give you all the supplements. I know what the herbs are. I'm really good at formulating botanical tinctures. I'm a great diagnostician. I know how to analyze your immune system and biochemical pathways. So I was the expert. My practice was booked out over a year here in Phoenix, Arizona. I consulted with people around the world. And then it all, like, shit hit the fan. I stopped sleeping. I was riddled with panic, and I was trying all of the things that I had been the authority of using with my clients to make the anxiety stop. And it wasn't working, which is like such a paradox. It's like when somebody's whole life is singing and then they like lose their ability to sing. It's like their one thing. It's like my one thing. And it's not working. So to make a long story longer, is I ended up having to sell my half of my company. I had to give up my job. I moved across the country, and I had to just be, what a privilege, by the way, to be able to do something like that. I recognize that. But I had to find stillness, and I had to be willing to look my anxiety and look my symptoms in the face and say to them, what are you trying to tell me? What's going on? And there's this beautiful quote, which I can't remember in its due justice, but it was almost like the body and the soul is like, I have been waiting my whole life to hear you ask this. And that is when everything changed.
Wow, that's super powerful. The two lines that come to mind is the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek, right? Which I think it's Jung or something like that, or the Rumi one, which is like, these pains are messages, right? Gotta listen to them.
Yes.
But so okay, so inherent in your story, you're feeling this anxiety, and how can, I guess I'm trying to put myself in the audience place, and I'm thinking, okay, well, if I'm new to anxiety, that anxiety isn't a bad thing. How can I feel confident then to lean into the anxiety and to, as you put so elegantly, stare it in the face, right? And how can you be sure that that's the right path?
Yeah. And our suffering is true suffering. And I want to acknowledge and honor to the person who's listening is that it can be really, really painful to feel it. And so I have a 4-step process to kind of help with that process. And it's kind of a feel it to heal it, and to allow the symptoms to give you specific data. So first, I'll give you a concrete example of that, and then we can go through the how to do it. And so this comes from when I was in my clinical residency. We had a woman who came into the student clinic, and she had been feeling pretty healthy for a super long time. She didn't have digestive upset. She didn't have headaches. But her blood work came in, and her CBC, which is a complete blood count, it's something is often included in your annual blood work. It looks at your red blood cells and your immune system cells and things like that. And her numbers were really, really abnormal, but she didn't have any symptoms. And so we ended up doing more digging because the numbers are important to kind of explore. And it turns out that she had stage 4 ovarian cancer. But the biggest thing that we had to work through with her is that her body didn't give her any warning signs. It didn't give her any hints. It didn't tell her, hey, something is wrong. And that story stuck with me as one of maybe the original opportunities for me to look at symptoms in a slightly different way. And a more personal example is I have a history of a fear of flying. I don't like turbulence. It's really miserable. When I used to fly, I would like clutch a Bible to my chest and go into the fetal position and just cry. I was like, this is it. I was like 100% sure I was going to die on a plane. And recently, I just flew back. I was in Michigan, and I flew back to Arizona, and there were tornadoes going across Kansas. And this time, after all of this work that I've been doing, and we'll dig into more concretely, is there were horrible storms. The plane was horribly turbulent for an hour and 45 minutes. And the body can remember. But here's the biggest difference between fear and anxiety and awareness is fear are those biological changes that take place that save us. And so if there's a tiger growling in the woods, if your ancestor wasn't afraid of that, then they maybe suffer for a tiger. But if your ancestor had a fear response, their adrenals make adrenaline, cortisol, their heart beats faster, their brain shuts down, and they're like, just run. They're more likely to survive. So fear is a natural life-saving response in a truly dangerous situation, whereas anxiety is an emotional reaction to something that isn't unsafe, which then is combined with a feeling of disempowerment. And so now I'm anxious. I'm anxious driving on the interstate, even though the interstate really is safe. I can make good choices as a driver. Or I'm anxious going up on stage and doing public speaking. Or I'm anxious when my kids go to school during the day. What if they fall and hit their head, even though the school is safe and there are good teachers? So we feel anxious. So we get those similar, almost identical biological changes, and then it's truly safe, but the context is we don't feel empowered. So this time when I flew, I was feeling, I remember these feelings. My skin starts to feel cold, but like it's on fire and it's burning. And then I get zapping nerve pain across my teeth and my heart starts pounding. And here's the difference. If I was to allow myself to go into anxiety, that disempowered, I'm out of control, I'm terrified, I'm afraid feeling, that's how I used to be. And this time I was like, oh, interesting. My body is remembering being afraid on a plane. And I know I'm safe, even though this feels really yucky. And I know what I can do to help soothe the body into feeling calm. And that's the 4-step process that I'll teach you. And so I did really well on that flight and on many flights before that, because the entire relationship around the experience changed. So I want to pause and kind of hear your reflection on that.
Well, it's a very interesting lens you sit at, because you obviously study this and research this, but it's also your own personal experience. And I can relate first time I ever had a panic attack, I didn't know what it was. You know, growing up in England, that's not a thing, panic attacks, right? And I was probably 17, and I had to ask my psychology teacher, who, what a guy, because I interrupted his class. I was like, hey, can I speak to you outside? He was like, yeah. And I was explaining what's going on. I'm like, am I going crazy? Is this like a hallucination? What is this? I feel like I need to run. And he gently explained it was a panic attack. And then since then, I can, over the course of like the next sort of 10, 11 years, I've noticed at times where I've been maybe close to sort of getting there, but because I'm aware of it, it's almost the space between my conscious mind or my anxious mind and me as an observer. So there's a gap between. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm aware of what's happening. But I guess cultivating that awareness is super hard. So that's my reflection of what you said. And I'm curious to know how you, I guess, develop the first, before you get into the 4 stages, I want to know how you came to them first, I guess. Is kind of curious.
I honor you for doing the hard work, by the way, and having such a scary experience and then talking to someone you trust about it. I really honor that.
Oh, thanks. I mean, he was a great guy, right? So it was easy to.
Yeah. And how wonderful that he knew what was going on. Because one thing that people worry about is, oh my God, is my anxiety attack gonna hurt me? And so then we experience fear of the fear. And so one thing I want to mention to those who may have had that thought as you were talking is your anxiety isn't dangerous. It's your body doing exactly what it's designed to do. It just has a winter coat on and it's hot outside. And so you're having a reaction that may not be in context with your current experience. And so then our job is to figure out, well, why is that happening? So we want to increase awareness, which is exactly what you just said, Ben, is we want to increase awareness. And I teach people it's the stoplight exercise. And so the green light is, I would actually draw this out on a piece of paper, is draw a circle for a green light, draw a circle for a yellow light, and then draw a circle for a red light. The green light is when you're feeling really calm, really relaxed. This may be your alpha brain state. This is when you're kind of creative, and it's like how we are when we're hanging out here. You and I are talking today. We're curious, we're creative, but we're not racing and running around. It's just kind of chill mode, right? And so that's where we want to be. And there are activities and habits and strategies that can help stay there, help keep us there. And lots of people talk about habits and strategies to stay in your ventral vagus or calm state, connected. And then there will be a moment, because all of us get activated. It's important to be able to be activated, is you'll start to notice like, ooh, little canary, a little something. I'm feeling a little activated. And if you can catch that, I call this the pay attention zone, then oftentimes you can address whatever's going on in your thoughts, in your body. It could be that you're a little hungry. It could be that someone is asking you too many questions. It could be that your nervous system is overstimulated, or it could be that you need to move your body. Whatever it is, there's that little moment between green and yellow when things start to shift. And if you can catch it there, that'll be really good, because your prefrontal cortex, or the part of your brain that allows you to think logically, that part is still online. But what will happen as we become more and more and more activated? So let's say that you're in a classroom, you're sitting in class, and you went to class and you were feeling really calm, but maybe the teacher started explaining something and you didn't understand it and you're getting a little nervous. And then they mention, oh, there's a pop quiz that's going to be at the end of class and you're going to be quizzed on this material. And now you're getting a little activated. So you hit that pay attention zone and we kept going. And so now you're feeling a little bit of arousal, which can be very different for everybody. I have actually a whole quiz is called the 9 types of anxiety, where it can help us. It's a free quiz. It can help us kind of figure out like, oh, I didn't know that my heart pounding could be panic, or electric zapping across my teeth could be panic, right? So, okay, I'm starting to notice I'm getting a little activated. And then what happens biologically or in neuroscience as we move from that pay attention moment through the yellow, get more and more activated, and then into the red, which is crisis, which is panic, which is rage, which is total fear, feeling out of control, is our logical brain gets largely shut down. And the amygdala, which is in the center of your brain, kind of near the level of your temples, you just go straight in. The amygdala is the emotional processing part of the brain. That's sending danger signals to the body. And then the body's like, I got you. We're going to run from that tiger. We don't know what's going on. We just know that we need to help them either fight, flight, flop, fawn, fracture, or freeze, whatever the danger is. And so then we feel completely out of control. And so that thought exercise that I told you about on the plane, where I talked to myself and I was like, oh, this is what's going on, is because I've learned those telltale signs of like, oop, we're getting a little activated and my logical brain's still on. But in that 4-step process, I'll teach you how to do that and what to do if your logical brain is like gone out the window and you're all on autopilot fear.
Yeah, 100%. So many different tangents off what you said. I'm curious about what the brain looks like when it's in a state of anxiety versus a normal brain.
Yeah. If we can look at SPECT scans or functional MRI scans. Is when someone is really anxious, we see lots of activation in the emotional processing part of the brain. So the center of the brain, the limbic system, and the front parts of the brain, or the cortex, especially the prefrontal cortex, which you probably would look at a side view. This is going to have very little activation. And so biologically, if a tiger's coming out of the woods, you don't want to analyze the tiger's intentions. So the signal that gets sent from the insular cortex, the thalamus, the parts of the brain that's scanning your environment internally and externally, it's going to send the signal to the amygdala much faster than the signal that will go to the prefrontal cortex. And so then you're already feeling your heart pounding and like running away before you even know what's going on. So the imaging will reflect that.
I always find it interesting, and it's what is it? It's confirming that you talk about different types of anxiety and how anxiety manifests differently in different people. Because
Yes.
when talking about anxiety with friends or people, you feel like you're talking about the same thing until you're not. And it's like, oh, I didn't experience that. Was it the same thing? And I was always interested of how many people think they're having a heart attack, and they're like, no, 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 I'm
Yeah.
having a heart attack. Get me to the hospital now. When it's actually just
Yes.
their autonomic nervous system sort of in overdrive, right? Which is
Yeah.
crazy. Well,
Yeah.
not crazy, but
That's
fascinating.
amazing, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
amazing is
It
what I was.
That's called chest anxiety. And so that's anxiety that shows up in the heart or the chest where people can feel like they're having a heart attack. And in my book, Panic Proof, I have a reference to a study that you could take a peek at where they did this huge analysis of people who went to the emergency department complaining or afraid or concerned about a heart attack and how many of them actually were having a heart attack. And so the study results showed that 80% of those individuals were actually having a panic attack and it wasn't a heart attack. So what you suspected was 100% correct.
Wow. Okay, that's a large proportion of people, right? But as anyone who's listening to, and I'm sure you can relate, Nicole, is it feels so physiologically real
Yeah,
that you're really feeling all these things intensely. So, when you've got to that point, you can't think your way out of it, right? So,
exactly.
okay, so the first step is cultivating that awareness to know when you're sort of getting closer to that point of no return, I guess. Um,
Yes,
the
exactly.
oh, sorry, go on.
And I was just going to say is in knowing that maybe someone who's listening to this, they have a loved one that has anxiety and panic. And so keep in mind that telling them to calm down or to that it's okay may not be helpful in those moments, and remind them of the 4-step process that we'll learn in this episode instead.
Mm, absolutely. It always you see it every now and again when someone well-intentioned is saying "calm down" in a very uncalming way. It's just like,
Yeah,
no, this is not right. Um,
right.
Another side note is I'm fascinated. I think you had a on your blog you had an article on this, which is the link between anxiety and neuroplasticity.
Yes.
I feel like from an evolutionary perspective, it makes sense. But could you just speak
Yeah.
to that and sort of tell us the link?
Yeah. Neuroplasticity refers to our brain's ability to change and heal. And we used to believe that our brains would stop developing in our 20s. And it just turns out that that's not correct. Our brains will always continue to grow and change and adapt. And so you may be an octogenarian and you're pushing 90 and your brain can still heal, just like my brain and your kids' brains. It's just a matter of what is unique to you. And this is a gift of neuroplasticity. And the really wonderful thing about neuroplasticity is that we've learned lots of ways to leverage it. And so a concrete kind of, I'm a metaphor person. So here's a metaphor for those who think like I do, is if you imagine a mountain, and if you stand at the top of the mountain and you look down, you're going to see rivets that have been carved into the mountain as rain has fallen from the clouds and water gathered and it falls towards the earth below, right? And so these rivets are a metaphor for neuroplastic adaptations that you have developed throughout your life. But we have all been being programmed how to see the world, how to exist in the world from very early ages. We were fed, we were told what to eat, when to eat, how to eat. We create our sense of self by how our mother looks into our eyes, or if she does. And we have been programmed biologically and behaviorally, nature and nurture, how to respond to our environment, our internal and external environment. So those are the ravines that are in the mountain. So that when stress happens and the rain falls out of the clouds, it's going to go where it's always gone. But you can change this. Neuroplasticity is where we fill in those ravines that take you down inflammation, that take you down hormone imbalance, that take you down gut microbiome imbalance, that take you down to behaving in ways that hurt you or your loved ones, or feeling self-destructive, or whatever it is, mind, body behaviors, all of it. You start to fill those in and carve new ones. And so what we actually see more on a neuroscience level, so there's the mountain, you're going to carve new ravines. So when stress happens, the water goes where you want it to go. And then in neuroscience, this is done by increasing synaptic connections, axons, dendrites, the roads in our brains, is sending them where you want them to go. There's a quote, it's the way that you wire it is the way that you'll fire it. And I grew up in a family that if somebody talks over you and interrupts you, they would get angry and blow up. And so as an adolescent, I learned that that's a normal behavior and a normal response. And I remember I made a band instructor mad because I did that. And he taught me the word insubordinate. And I always think about that. So then as I came into adulthood, I was like, oh, I don't have to respond that way. But it's so hard to not. It's so automatic. I feel it in my bones and it comes out of my mouth before I can stop myself. So I had those rivets, those ravines, and I had to start the process of reprogramming through neuroplasticity. And we have so much clinical evidence that you can do this and how.
It's amazing. It's such a hopeful underpinning of humanity. I mean,
Yeah.
especially growing up in the UK as well, I thought, oh, I had this period before 25 where I get all my learning in, and that's my personality, and that's me, and lovely,
Yeah.
but it's not, and I've got far more time, which is great, so I need it. But I was always fascinated by what I've been learning about the link between what fires that when something is important, the neurochemical environment in your brain lends itself for more synaptic change, is my understanding. But that seems to be very linked with anxiety itself.
Yeah. You're bringing to mind, I think, a really big future in neuroscience clinical psychology is mitochondria and redox. And so mitochondria, for those who are listening, maybe when you were in basic sciences, you learned that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Did you learn that?
Did I?
That's
yeah.
Did you?
Did I?
Who
I didn't then.
didn't?
Yeah, exactly. Someone tried to tout that to me then. I probably had no interest. Now I'm very, very interested and keenly anticipating what you're about to say next.
Yeah. So think about, for those who didn't learn all about that, is that every single cell in your body has a battery, if you will, and that's the mitochondria. And this creates energy. And within that, there's all sorts of cells and things, or electrons and atoms and things that take place to create this trend. One of them is the electron transport chain. And the electron transport chain is creating energy. But what we're finding more recently, especially in a post-COVID world, is that lots of people are struggling with jammed electron transport chains. So your mitochondria, it's like your car engine won't start. And so if that cell isn't getting that battery or that car starting, that cell isn't going to have the energy to do what that cell's job is. And these are cells from head to foot. So are the cells in your liver allowing your liver to do its job to detox? Are the cells in the gut microbiome creating a really good gut-brain protection layer? Is it leaky? Is there inflammation? And what about like producing hormones? Are those cells getting the energy for that? What about neuroplasticity? Does your brain have the energy to create new synaptic connections? And so many people are struggling with issues with their mitochondria. And that, I think, is the future, where if we can just give the body what it needs. This is some of the tenets of what makes naturopathic medicine unique. One is, what are the obstacles to cure? What is getting in the way of you healing? For me, I had to leave a job. I had to sell my company. I had to get out of that environment before I could heal. For some people, the obstacle to cure is that their mitochondria are not working correctly. And so then we give the body what it needs so that the mitochondria can work, so that we can have neuroplasticity. So some people are teaching about brain-derived neurotrophic factor, things that produce BDNF, trophorestoratives. These are herbs that have a botanical action of restoring the the brain, the nervous system, and also supporting detox. Because if there's an accumulation of toxic burden, your engine isn't going to work well. And I know I'm kind of taking a little bit of sidebar here, but this is, I think, especially important. I know it's especially important in the United States. I'd be curious what your boots on the ground where you are would say. But the food source here, the food supply here in the US is not great. And we have thousands and thousands of ingredients that they're riddled with problematic things like organophosphates, heavy metals, and GMO foods that have low nutrient density. We're not rotating our crop fields, giving back to the soil. So we have all these foods that are actually causing problems and not taking care of problems. And so I'm kind of curious, as you're hearing that, how is that kind of tracking with where you are?
Oh, absolutely. It completely lands in the sense of this link between one's own mitochondria and mental health. This, metabolic psychiatry, whatever you want to call it. But the data is just too hard to ignore. Something that 80% of people with IBS have some form of anxiety or depression, right? I might be getting the numbers slightly off there, but and it tracks, people who are obese often have more instances of poor mental health, and it's directly correlated with what you put into your body. I think in the UK, there's a lot of glyphosate in the UK as well as the US, which is great for the mitochondria. But this link is so exciting to see where it goes. And it sheds light on lots of downstream things have happened when glucose isn't stable, and it is constantly fluctuating, and the downstream things that happen with the brain as a result of that. So tying it back to neuroplasticity, the mitochondria are vital for neuroplasticity, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So when it comes to your 4 steps of, I guess in essence, you're rewiring your nervous system and these rivets you very eloquently put. So maybe if we start with step 1. So step 1 is the awareness. Have I got that right?
Yeah. Yes. The first step is awareness. And when we're in a state of activation, also being aware of what can I do automatically that's going to work. And so creating habits. So awareness. And then when you're not activated is then maybe even writing down and just creating like a little bookmark that tells you these are what we're going to do, so that if you get activated, remembering this podcast episode that, oh, my logical brain, they may be offline. So I need to just follow a habit protocol, these 4 steps. And so when you become aware that you're shifting out of your happy, green, comfortable zone, which is good for us, by the way, it's expanding our window of tolerance, but sometimes it's not fun and we want to go back in. Here's how. So the very first thing you want to do is you want to activate the body. And this is touch and smell and sight and breath and seeing. These are things that are going to activate more of your old brain, your reptilian brain. This is things that when my puppy dog is stressed out, if I scratch her behind the ears or give her a treat, these are body-based things that will work for us. And I teach people about making a panic pack, which is so fun, and you can do it in all ages. You just get a little bag, and it could be a Merce if you're a guy and you don't want to carry a purse, right? Can be one of those Lululemon bags that people are carrying around all over the place, whatever it is. And you're going to place inside of your panic pack things that are going to be useful for you when your stress is high. And so I would include a cold pack, and you can get these online. That's useful for a first aid kit. It's the size of your average cell phone. And if you shake it up, it will get cold. And cold is very, very helpful for when we're in autonomic arousal or in that fight, flight, fear kind of fawn fracture. And I recommend placing it over the eyes, the chest, or the back of the neck in 30-second increments. So the very first thing you can do, oh, I'm feeling really anxious, is you can start doing your breathing, get your cold pack out, place it over your eyes, 30 seconds on, 15, 20 seconds off, 30 seconds on. And I hinted at the breath. Your breath is your most powerful asset, is that when you exhale, you activate vagus nerve. And vagus nerve is like your light switch to feeling calm. And the exhale is the most important. We also see that the nervous system on the left side of the nostril is a little different from the right side of the nostril. So if you want to increase the effectiveness of the breath, you might consider doing left nostril breathing. So a cycle that I like to use and that I was using on the plane in that story I told you is I inhaled for 4 on my right side, and then I held at the top for 4, and then I did the biggest exhale that I could through my mouth or through my nose on the left side. And the longer the exhale, the better. Even better if you could just move your tummy. So practice moving your tummy. A way to know if you move your tummy is to lay on the floor on your back, maybe put a couple of books on your tummy, and then try breathing in and raising the books, and then exhale and allow them to come back down, and practicing that. A couple of other things that you could put in your panic pack would be smells. So a couple of essential oils, maybe you put them on a cotton ball if you're going to be getting on a plane and you can't bring glass, and then you can sniff it. We've seen that lavender, pure lavender essential oil, can stimulate the brain to produce GABA. GABA makes us feel relaxed. So we love that. And then fidgets, touch. I remember I was getting some really unpleasant dental work done, and I was waiting for them to do the sharp injection of the numbing solution. So I got a really spiky fidget. And so my brain was paying much more attention to the spike that I was doing. It's like a little thing you stick on your thumb and spike it. And so those can be helpful too. So those are a couple of ideas. Have you done anything like that? Any of these tools?
You know what? No, I haven't. But I'm similar to you. Metaphor helps. You know, metaphor. Or you said you like thinking of metaphors, and me, I'm exactly the same. And the one for me that helped with anxiety was, I mean, I've definitely tried to focus on my breath and things like this. And actually, the last time I had a panic attack, it's really quite bad. I put 11 chamomile teas in a chamomile tea, and I just made the strongest chamomile tea. And whether it's placebo or not, it worked. Don't encourage it, but and then went on a run. So maybe not the best, most professional use, but it did work. It was a while ago now. The best sort of thing that works for me is acceptance. And I used to live in Australia, and they've got rip currents. So if you're surfing, and if you fall in, as you do, and you get a rip current, you don't swim against it because you waste your energy, and you don't panic. You literally just, all right, all good, and you just go with it, and it'll take you out, and you get out where you finish. And that for me is the best analogy for anxiety, because it will pass. It's not permanent, but you just got to go with it and accept it. Easier said than done. And for me personally, I don't know why that worked, but have you had any sort of psychological reframes or things like that work for you?
Yeah, that's seriously, sincerely so brilliant. And I will always think about that. That's really good. Is because what we deny will amplify, what we resist will persist. Yes, what we deny will amplify. And so if you fight the rip current, that's when people drown, is they get tired. And so by just allowing the body to just like, I am acknowledging this, I'm noticing it, I accept it. I'm going to notice unique details about what are the thoughts, the feelings, the sensations. So I love that you also mentioned chamomile tea. So let's say that somebody's listening to this, and when they get activated, they get stomach upset. Maybe they get diarrhea. Maybe they get reflux or indigestion, or they get super bloaty. is that's one of the gifts of knowing the 9 types of anxiety, is by getting a little bit more specific about what the body is telling us. Like, I accept it, I receive it, and I hear what you're saying, is that my gut's involved. There's something going on, and it's having a conversation with my gut. And so using anti-anxiety strategies that restore balance to the gut, increase neuroplasticity, maybe bring down inflammation, will work better. Chamomile is amazing for gut anxiety. And you said you use 10 tea bags, and like arguably, if you look at the per kilogram toxicity dose of chamomile, like you would have to eat like half a field of the plants to get sick.
This is good.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're safe. I like
Phew.
tinctures, and teas just aren't as strong. Unless your body is really responsive to teas, then that's beautiful. Do that. But I love tinctures. They have a long shelf life. They're in a alcohol preserved bottle, and you just squeeze the droppers into water. Another one that I like to suggest to people is kava kava. Have you ever tried that?
I haven't, but I used to play rugby in Australia, and the people from the Pacific Islands used to have kava, and it used to chill them out quite a lot. Apparently, that's my only experience with it.
It's disgusting, but it works really well. And what's lovely about it is, some people, they turn to their emergency Xanax, a benzodiazepine, and the trade-off for that, though, is that you can't drive a vehicle because you're zombied out. And so it's like, do I want to be panicking or do I want to be a zombie? Kava kava has been studied to work similar to a benzodiazepine in that it stimulates GABA A receptors, but it doesn't make you stupid. It doesn't make you slow. It doesn't slow your brain down. So your brain is nice and crisp, and your body is more relaxed. So I use this for a lot of high achievers that are doing public speaking or performing, is like 3 big squeezes of kava kava tincture into water and then shooting it back. And one thing for those who are listening is, the kava kava is good if it makes your tongue tingle a little bit. So it's not bad. It's supposed to tingle. The tingling will go away, just as a disclaimer.
Okay, great. I used to have a business involved in botanical extracts, essentially, and
seriously,
I did, and I like to think I've tried the rainbow, but I haven't tried kava kava, so it will be on my list and my Amazon basket after this conversation. I'll try it. I'll let you know.
Report back. I want to hear what you
will.
think.
Yeah. How about I guess the common ones would be ashwagandha, L-theanine, rhodiola. What are your thoughts on these ones?
I love L-theanine for thought anxiety and chest anxiety. Or if you overdo it on coffee and you're like, oh my gosh, now I'm anxious, I had too much coffee, theanine is awesome for that. I love theanine also for people like my clients who are tapering down on benzos to help create a GABA bridge if they are getting a lot of withdrawal. Theanine is awesome. It's an amino acid. It's restorative for the brain. And so it's kind of feeding 2 birds with 1 pellet, if you will. Theanine's great. Ashwagandha is awesome in that it's really good for, a lot of people find it to be calming. You can take it at nighttime. It helps with sleep, but it also supports adrenal gland health. In some people, especially women who have a history of high androgens or male sex hormones, such as polycystic ovarian syndrome, in some women, ashwagandha can cause acne. So instead, they may try the women's version, which is called shatavari or wild asparagus. And it helps with libido. It's an aphrodisiac. It improves energy. It repairs the nervous system. I love shatavari. And so that's a really good one. A lot of people haven't yet heard about. And then you listed one more. What was the other one you listed?
Rhodiola.
I love rhodiola. And rhodiola is especially good if you're going to be doing traveling. And so rhodiola is anti-anxiety. It's anti-depression. It repairs the stress system. So if you've gone through chronic stress, and it can help if you're going in altitude changes. So if you're going to fly, or if you're going to go and stay in a city in the mountains, but you usually live at the beach, then rhodiola might be a go-to. That one is a little slower acting. So you drink chamomile, you'll feel more calm. Rhodiola, give that herb like 6 weeks to really start to shine.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's very
Yeah.
interesting. I'll I'll report back again. I've got a few things to report back on. Yeah,
Yes. Yes.
the the taking and the supplementation thing. It is an interesting realm within this conversation, because I think often people might think of them as a crutch to lean on.
Yeah.
When there's much more, my understanding is there's lots more foundational things you do first, and maybe these things are sort of the sprinkle on top. What are your thoughts
Yeah.
on where they fit in?
My heart is so joyful to hear you saying this. And the big difference is in the why am I taking this? And so we'll use a pain example, and then we'll use an emotional example. If somebody has, let's say, chronic back pain, and they go to their standard doctor, the doctor cares about their patient. They don't want them to have back pain. So they give them something to relieve the symptom. They may give them a Tylenol. They may give them an opiate. They may give them all sorts of things. The why is to stop the suffering by suppressing the symptom, right? Because then oftentimes, if let's say the back pain is occurring because they're going to the gym and they're not holding the right form and they're hurting their back every time they go to the gym, right? You could take Tylenol every day, and until you fix your form, you're not going to feel better in your back. So then if you go to a more natural oriented doctor and they think of it the same way and use a natural substance, you're going to get either the same result or maybe an inferior result, because pharmaceuticals are formulated to be more powerful oftentimes. So maybe the doctor will say, well, you're in pain, you're suffering, you need to take magnesium and turmeric and maybe white willow bark. And so then you go back and you keep doing CrossFit and you're doing weightlifting and your back still hurts. Then you go to a vitalist, somebody who's a traditional naturopath who's trained like I am, who says, your back is trying to tell us something. What is going on? Let's learn more about why your back is giving you pain. It's not giving you pain for kicks and giggles. There's something that it's trying to communicate, something that needs healing. And so then if we do a little bit deeper digging, that person, that wise clinician, that wise healer may identify, oh, is your form off when you're doing that weightlifting? What if we correct that just a little bit and then support tissue repair, maybe with collagen and glutathione and maybe a little turmeric and magnesium? But the difference is in the why. Why, what are we treating and why are we giving that? And I think that's what you're kind of pointing out is if somebody is experiencing a lot of anxiety or insomnia or panic, we first want to look at why. And then we want to treat the root cause of that. And that's another gift of the 9 types of anxiety, is that it allows us to be a little bit more specific, because we don't have a blood test for anxiety. We don't have a one-stop shop. Our treatments are pretty generalized. And the research shows that we can do, I think, a lot better. And so if somebody has anxiety, like me, because of childhood trauma, then treating the trauma will make my anxiety better because I'm healing. If another person has panic and anxiety because they're eating food with a lot of glyphosate, and then that's causing issues in the mitochondria, we could give them benzos and chamomile and kava kava, but when they stop those treatments, unless they've addressed the glyphosate, they're going to be back at the beginning and probably feeling more disempowered. So I really think that you just probably, like, a soundbite would be what you just asked. I think that's the most important question of the whole conversation.
Oh well, it was completely unintentional, so I'm glad. I'm glad it was a random shot in the dark. I hope.
Yeah.
I am looking at my list of questions, and I always know it's a good episode when I haven't asked any, because it's just taken its whole turn.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe we could do a part 2 at some point, because you got a lot to say.
I would love that.
Oh, as would I. It's been super fun. Actually, I will ask this one, actually, because it is very good. I read you talk about spiritual enlightenment within this context and sort of the spiritual aspect of in this healing.
Yeah.
What would you say to someone who, I guess, hearing that wouldn't put the spiritual aspect into this healing and sort of anxiety journey?
Okay, we're going to use a metaphor.
Perfect.
So I want you to imagine that somebody is playing a beautiful violin concerto. They're standing on the stage, there's the spotlights, they have the violin, and they're playing this music. And the effect of that music is that you feel it. Like, as I'm even describing it, like, I'm feeling it in my body. I feel it in my arms. I'm like, oh, I love it, right? So somebody is playing that. So let's parse that apart. How did we get a good feeling, a good result? Happiness, right? Well, first you have the instrument. You have a beautiful violin. You have an intact violin. If I got a cheap violin out of the dumpster behind a violin store, I kicked it and I put on crappy strings and maybe forgot one and gave that instrument to that player, your experience listening to that music won't be as positive because their instrument isn't good. That's the body. It's the instrument. And then we have the skill set of the player. So if I give a beautiful violin to a kindergartner and ask them to play concerto, it may sound like screaming cats on stage because they don't have the skill set, right? That's the mind. And then let's say we have a beautiful violin, we have a very skilled violinist, and I want to play a happy song. I want to feel better and feel happy. But they just lost someone beloved to them. Their spirit, their soul, they're grieving, they're so sad, and they play this song, and everybody who's listening is weeping, right? So, healing, our symptoms, our lived experience of what it is to be human, of what it is to live this life that we live, is a composite of mind, body, and spirit, just like the violin and the music. The music is what life is like for us. And so, if you've been spending your money on functional tests, you've done an OAT test, environmental toxin testing, glyphosate testing, blood testing, iron testing, you've done all the testing and you feel really stuck. If you take all the supplements, you feel like you're swallowing back so many supplements, you don't even have room for lunch. If you feel like you've taken all the medications, if you feel like you've done all the exercise programs and the free memberships and all of the things, you feel like you've done all of the things, look at what might be missing. That's when you do the deeper dive. That's the beginning of my story, is when everything fell apart. And that's where the answer is that you are a human mind, body, and spirit. And this is kind of, we could totally get into this in another way, but this is why I think the psychedelic revolution is taking off so much, is because we've lived in such a materialistic, body-based, logical, analytical, functional-based world for so long. We have all these people that are soul sick. And then when they take some of these plants like psilocybin, one of the mechanisms of action of the plant is then suddenly we feel connected to the earth. We feel connected to something outside of ourselves. And people are starving for that, the soul.
Soul sick. That is a lovely
sick.
term I've never heard before.
Yeah.
Really nice. And I think it's a beautiful metaphor. I'm very pleased to ask that question. It really resonates, really does. Do you, I think that soul sickness, or the searching for something, that spiritual peace, it seems like there's lots of doors to the same house there, and it doesn't really matter which one you go through. You just got to find one that works for you.
Yes.
If you could put anything on a billboard for everyone to see, what would you put?
Your anxiety is the answer you need.
It's a pretty great answer. I think people reading that would definitely take note, and it would reframe the conventional wisdom around anxiety pretty instantly.
Or they would be mad and post a Google review.
Yeah.
What is this lady talking about?
Yeah. Just get me a benzo. I don't want to feel it. No.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've been there. Yeah, your anxiety is the answer you need.
Okay. Lovely. And last question from me is, what important truth do you believe that very few people agree with you on?
that you can actually heal from anxiety, that you can actually live a life free from anxiety. This doesn't mean you'll never feel fear. Fear is natural. You want to feel fear. Fear is important. Anxiety is different. Anxiety is a symptom that tells you there's something that needs healing. And your job is just to figure out how, which is what this podcast is for. It's what my book is for. We're all here to figure it out together. And everyone, as you said, is different. But your anxiety can truly be healed.
Wonderful. Well, Dr. Nicole Cain, thank you so much for coming on. I had such a blast, super fun. You're a fascinating lady. Where can we keep up with your work? Where can we follow along? Where can we go out and buy your book? Tell us everything.
The book is called Panic Proof, and you can find it anywhere books are sold. And I love hanging out with people online on Instagram. I'm on YouTube. I have a website, and they're all under the handle Dr. Nicole Cain, which is DrNicoleCain.
Lovely. Well, once again, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. And yeah, thanks for staying with us so long, folks.
This has been great. Thanks.